Before Governor Lot Morrill leaves office, after the election of 1860, he senses that the United States is in trouble. This whole business about slavery and the abolition of slavery was boiling over. The temperature was getting quite hot. He thinks that trouble's coming. In taking a look at, say, the size of the Federal Army, there are fewer than 18,000 men serving in the Army of the United States, active duty, in 1860. Most of those, over half of them, are west of the Mississippi and continuing to move west of the Mississippi. Not only did the 18,000 split between east and west, they also split between north and south. Some of the southern states had sent volunteers into the Army, and if there was going to be an outbreak, there was a question of where the loyalty would lie with some of these southern soldiers. Like Robert E. Lee, for example, one of the officers who splits, John Breckinridge, who splits from his sworn duty to the United States and goes instead to the Confederate States. Lot Morrill asks acting adjutant general, he puts the touch on Davis Tilson, a guy who graduated from West Point, not yet enlisted in the Army. Tilson is active, knows what he's talking about, and Lot Morrill says, will you go around and see what strengths we have in the militia of Maine? There were supposed to be some 30 companies of militia, local units that could be called up in the event of trouble. Well, the militia hadn't been called up in Maine since the rum riots in Portland in 1855 and 6. They had fallen into disuse. There were still several companies around, obviously, and Tilson was able to find them. One of them is the Kittery Artillery Company. They didn't have much to shoot at. They didn't have any reason to shoot. Each company was allotted space for 100 men. The Kittery Artillery at the time was down to 32 men. The head of those Kittery Artillery militia was a guy by the name of Mark Wentworth. Wentworth looked at this and said, since they were being asked, maybe we better find out where we are. So he brings the guys together. And it's a regular Sunday meeting kind of thing, once a month. And Wentworth says, look, we're about to go into a war footing. If you're not interested in staying with us, you better let us know. And one of the minor officers in the company says, look, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up to be here. I signed up, but I had a family now, and rises from his chair, and he leaves the meeting. The guys who left behind him hissed him from the hall. And Wentworth sends the note to the governor saying that he did have 32, but now he's down to 31 because things changed. War breaks out. They didn't really need the Kittery Artillery right off, so they instead assigned the Kittery Artillery to essentially defensive duty at Fort McClary. Fort McClary is about maybe 2/3, 3/4 finished. It is never finished, but they do garrison the place with the Kittery Artillery. Over time, they realize we need more men. We need more guys to be brought forward. And since these guys already know how to defend, why don't we bring them to Washington? And they bring Mark Wentworth, and now the guys who are reconstituted as the 27th Maine Regiment. They're joined by other companies and brought to Washington, D.C. and set up on the defensive perimeter of Washington. This is critical because they're looking in these first 6 months of 1863 that their enlistment period is going to end. The time that they can be called up is going to end. They're going home. Robert E. Lee brings the Army of Northern Virginia into Pennsylvania, and now they're approaching Gettysburg, and Gettysburg is roughly the distance between Biddeford and Augusta, or Augusta and Old Town. It's under 90 miles. So some of the groups that were protecting the perimeter of Washington were asked to stay, including 25th and 27th Maine, both of whom were supposed to be done by June 30th of 1863. And the 25th Maine said, we're done on the 30th. Moves up the line. goes to the 27th Maine and says to Mark Wentworth, will you poll your men, find out if any of them are willing to stay? Wentworth finds out that out of a regiment of almost 900 men, nearly 400 of them are willing to stay the extra day. The incentive is that they will be issued newly minted medals of honor. Whether that was enough to induce these guys to hang around, we don't really know, because 4 days after they agree to stay, the Battle of Gettysburg is over. Lee is retreating. He's not approaching Washington. The threat is gone. So they say to the 27th Maine, hey, thanks guys. You can go home now. After the war, so you're now waiting 2 years, they bring Mark Wentworth back. He goes on, he serves and in other capacities, but they bring him back and they say, by the way, we have these medals. Would you make sure they're distributed to the men who agreed to serve the extra time? Wentworth personally delivers over 300 of these medals of honor to the men of the 27th Maine. When he finishes, because he has the list of guys who served, he has over 600 medals just hanging around. He doesn't return them. They disappear. And they become, for Civil War buffs, for some military people, what happened to the medals of honor? Where did they go? It's one of the eternal mysteries. Meanwhile, there are 7 guys who were in the 27th Maine who died before 1913. They're buried in the Ocean View Cemetery. They were buried with their medals. But in 1913, the United States Congress says the Medal of Honor distinction has changed, and serving an extra 4 days without ever firing a gun, without ever facing the enemy, maybe that doesn't meet the standard, and they rescind the Medals of Honor. Mark Wentworth and company have to give the medals back.
Thanks for watching. And don't miss a single episode as we delve into the fascinating history of Maine's role in the Civil War. Please like and subscribe now.